History has never lacked in cruelty. It is filled with blood, betrayal, and the cries of those who were silenced by power. Yet among the many tales of tragedy, some stories carry such unbearable pain that they echo through centuries as warnings of human cruelty at its darkest. This is one of those stories. A queen, pregnant, vulnerable, and already carrying the weight of her nation's downfall, was forced to watch the unthinkable. Her children, the very blood of her blood, the future of her dynasty, were torn from her embrace. One by one, she watched them die, unable to protect them. Her screams could not move the hearts of her captors. Her tears did not soften their cruelty. She was a mother, a queen, and a victim of political hatred so venomous that even innocent children were not spared. This is not just a story of a royal downfall. It is a story of a woman who endured unimaginable grief, whose tragedy became a symbol of both maternal strength and human despair. Today, we step back into the age of courts and crowns, betrayal and power struggles. We will uncover the chilling account of the pregnant queen who was forced to watch her children die. Throughout history, queens have often been more than ceremonial figures. They were mothers, political symbols, and sometimes the scapegoats for their kingdom's failures. In the age of dynasties, children of royalty were not simply beloved offspring. They were heirs, living embodiments of alliances, treaties, and the future of empires. To destroy a royal child was to erase a bloodline. To destroy a queen's hope was to crush a dynasty from its very roots. The queen at the center of this story lived during a time when kingdoms teetered on the knife's edge of power. Every alliance was fragile, every betrayal fatal. The palace corridors glittered with gold, but were haunted by whispers of conspiracy. To be royal was to live in constant danger. She entered the royal family through marriage, bringing with her not only beauty and grace, but also the hopes of securing her husband's throne. From the moment she bore children, her role as queen became intertwined with her role as protector of the dynasty's survival. Each birth was celebrated as a political victory. Each child was a safeguard against rivals who sought to seize the throne. But behind the walls of her palace, tension simmered. Rivals watched her family with envy. Enemies plotted to destroy her line. And in the shadows, betrayal brewed. What happened next would prove that in the ruthless struggle for power, innocence is often the first casualty. The queen's life was shaped by duty. She was raised to embody dignity, to carry herself as both wife and sovereign. Her days were filled with ceremonies, council meetings, and the ceaseless watch over her children. She loved them fiercely, not as heirs to a throne, but as her flesh and blood. Her eldest was a boy, barely old enough to understand the weight of the crown he was destined to inherit. Bright-eyed, curious, and full of energy, he clung to his mother's side, often asking questions about the world beyond the palace walls. Her younger child, a girl, was delicate and soft-spoken, adored by all who saw her. Their laughter filled the palace halls, a fragile reminder that innocence could still survive within the fortress of power. And then there was the unborn child, the one she carried within her. This pregnancy was more than personal joy. It was political necessity. Another heir meant security. Another child meant the dynasty was stronger, more difficult to erase. The queen carried her unborn with both pride and fear, knowing that in her womb, she bore both her greatest gift and her greatest vulnerability. But as her belly grew, so did the storm outside the palace. The kingdom was sinking into turmoil. Rebellion, betrayal, and the hunger for power began to swirl around her like gathering thunderclouds. The queen sensed it. She heard the whispers in the corridors. She noticed the sudden changes in the faces around her court. Allies became strangers. Guards shifted their loyalties. Even within her palace walls, she could no longer be certain of who was friend and who was foe. And when the storm finally broke, it shattered everything she held dear. It began with betrayal. A trusted noble, once loyal, turned against her family. The gates of the palace were thrown open to enemies. The royal household, once untouchable, was overrun by those who sought vengeance against the crown. The king, her husband, was powerless. Stripped of authority, surrounded by traitors, he could not protect his wife or children. The queen's pleas fell on deaf ears. She begged for mercy, not for herself, but for her children. But mercy had no place in this revolt. The pregnant queen was dragged from her chambers. Her children were torn from her arms. She cried out, clinging to them with a desperation only a mother could know. But the guards pried her hands away. She screamed, not as a queen, but as a mother facing her worst nightmare. And then came the cruelty that history would never forget. The captors decided she would be forced to watch. It was not enough to destroy her children. They wanted her broken, hollowed, and crushed beneath a grief so unbearable that it would haunt her every breath until her own death. One by one, her children were brought before her. The little prince struggled, calling out for his mother. The princess wept, terrified and clinging to her brother. And the queen, helpless and pregnant, was made to stand as they were condemned. The first blow silenced her son. His cry echoed in her ears long after his body fell. The daughter's sobs followed. The queen's screams filled the chamber, but her captors only sneered. To them, her suffering was a true victory. And when it was over, the silence that followed was worse than the screams. The queen collapsed. Her body shook with sobs. Her pregnancy, already fragile, was pushed to the brink by the violence of grief. Yet the tormentors showed no compassion. They forced her to remain, to look upon the lifeless bodies of her children. Hours felt like lifetimes. The queen's tears dried into hollow silence. She sat in a daze, her arms clutching at the emptiness where her children had once been. Her unborn child stirred within her womb, a cruel reminder that while some life remained, the rest had been stolen from her. Her captors thought this would break her entirely. But in her silence, something else grew. Not strength, no, for she was shattered, but a haunting endurance. She lived on not because she wished to, but because fate had forced her into survival. News of the queen's suffering spread across kingdoms. Even in an age of blood and war, the tale shocked many. Mothers wept when they heard it. Kings and queens trembled, realizing that crowns could not shield them from cruelty. The queen herself never recovered. Her grief defined her final days. She carried her unborn to term, but the child entered a world already drenched in sorrow. History does not remember whether the child thrived or perished soon after, but it does remember the queen's torment. She became a symbol of maternal suffering, her tragedy whispered in courts as a reminder of how fragile power truly is. Centuries later, her story still haunts us. It forces us to confront the question, how could human beings commit such cruelty, not only to children but to a grieving mother? Her tale is more than history. It is a mirror, showing us the darkest depths of power when twisted by vengeance. It reminds us that behind the crowns, jewels, and thrones were real people, mothers, fathers, children, whose lives were shattered by ambition and hatred. The pregnant queen who was forced to watch her children die may have lived centuries ago, but her agony still echoes today. It teaches us that the greatest tragedies are not written in the rise and fall of kingdoms, but in the silent tears of those who were powerless to stop them. And so, her name may fade from the pages of history, but her suffering remains immortal. She was a queen, yes, but more than that, she was a mother, and no crown, no palace, no title could shield her from the cruelty of fate. Her children are gone, her dynasty destroyed, but her story lingers, warning us of what happens when power becomes more precious than humanity. This was the tragic tale of the pregnant queen who was forced to watch her children die.